Good friend, former Congressman Joe DioGuardi, CPA and founder of Truth in Government, He's live with us on the phone. Joe, good morning.
Good morning.
It is cold down here. You still got snow on the ground?
It's on the ground. It's frozen. It's coming down to about 7 degrees today, and they said there's going to be more snow this weekend. I can't wait. The days are getting longer. Spring is coming, right?
You can't hear him, Joe. We don't.
Yeah.
We don't. Hold on. We can't. We don't have Joe on the phone.
No, I'm here.
Okay. Well, we're going to continue.
I'm here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
I can hear him.
I put the speaker on. Hello, are you there?
No, you're okay. I've got you. I'm not quite sure why. Do we have him on the air now? We don't. He's not up. So, Joe.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, let me put you on hold. I'll bring you right back, okay?
Okay.
Okay, we're having technical difficulties. This is what you call live radio. Let's try it again. Are you there, Joe? Joe? See, we're having a problem with that. It might be his phone. So let us. Yep. See, that's probably his line again. So let us try that again. And yeah, how are we going to do that? I'm trying to figure out. He'll give us a call back. Let Joe give us a call back, and then we'll put him up on the air. Sorry about that. We have problems with his landline up there in New York. See, this is what happens when you live in a state with the high taxes and the utilities. And let's see if Joe gives us a call back here in a second, and then we'll get him back on the line. I want to talk to him about a couple things. First of all, he sent us a report on where we are with the debt, and we're going to talk about that. What amount of debt will be added this year to our already crushing over $18 trillion worth of debt, the deficit spending level. There's a new report out on that. As I talked about earlier, there's a report out on the jobless. Well, it's employment. There's not a report out on the jobless. It's really the employment number and how it's reported. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we want to talk about also how Rand Paul now has introduced new legislation following up on what his father wanted to happen, but it never did happen. Don't you love the Senate? That is to now audit the Fed, which hasn't been audited, and to then impose on it more oversight by the Congress. And they're very, very upset about that. They don't believe that Congress should have any more oversight of the Fed. And I think that's pretty telling about what's going on there. Let me see. Oh, and this is probably Joe. Good morning. Joe, are you there?
I'm calling you from my mobile. Can you hear me?
Oh, we got him now? Yeah, we must have had a problem with that landline. We've had problems. See, that's the problem with those high-tax states. You got to watch those high-tax. I know, it's okay, Joe.
Can't believe it.
So Joe, let me introduce this. This is Jim Clifton. He's the chairman and CEO of the Gallup organization, and this is what he said about he's saying it's an employment report, but it does not in any way truly reflect the situation with employment in America and he first said it was a lie. Now he's saying it's misleading the reports from the government. Listen very carefully.
Sure.
New job numbers out this morning. The number of Americans applying for jobless benefits rising to 278,000 over last week. That's up 11,000 from the week prior. In December, the jobless rate was 5.6%. The report for January comes out tomorrow. Meanwhile, the chairman and CEO of Gallup, the polling agency, says the official monthly unemployment rate is essentially phony. Jim Clifton, the CEO and chairman, writes this, quote, "The official unemployment rate, which cruelly overlooks the suffering of the long-term and often permanently unemployed, as well as the depressingly underemployed, amounts to a big lie." With me now is Jim Clifton, CEO and chairman of Gallup. How are you, sir, and good morning to you.
I'm doing great, Bill. How are you?
You made a headline after you wrote this piece. Tell me about the big lie. What is it?
Well, if I could do it over again, Bill, as I mentioned to him, we might call it very misleading, but the point is that number is getting so messy. It might be the most important metric in the United States of America and the world, how many people are working. It mixes part-time and full-time. And, of course, what everybody wants, a great American dream, is to have a good job, not a crappy job.
Yeah, or an average job. But what you write, Jim, is that the big lie has consequences. What are the consequences?
Here, the number of full-time jobs, and that's what everybody wants, as a percent of the total population is the lowest it's ever been.
Now, I'm going to stop there, Joe, so we can move on.
Yeah.
But listen, when I listen to
Makes
this.
sense to me.
Yeah. Well, when I listen to this, it reminds me of what you've talked about the overall books and how they're cooked. In other words, what we're going to do to make things look better is completely forget the 92 million people that aren't working. We're going to mix up the people who are underemployed and part-time employed and really not, report that as a decline in the quality of life, decline in income, and just put it out. On your side, you're saying, well, we don't put the long-term liabilities on the books. We don't put this on the books. And so when the report comes out, it's 18 trillion instead of maybe 90 trillion.
Right.
It's the same.
Well, while I was listening to that, and he said the biggest lie obviously is about the numbers and the national debt. But he's right. We're mixing apples and oranges. We're not telling the truth because we're confusing one thing with another, and it's all to paint a better picture than actually exists. This is wrong.
I was thinking when I was, I read the report and posted it. It did make a headline, but I also made a comment, I should say, to my listeners this morning, Joe, that when he sat in his office with the door closed, and I'm sure he told his administrative assistant, do not disturb me, or maybe he did it at home with a glass of wine, the words and the characterization was a lie. But after the report breaks and he gets all of the attention and all the political pressure on him, now he's saying, oh, I should have said misleading. You see? But what we need is more people like you and him that start out and stick with, it's a lie, right?
Listen, lies are what you say, and sometimes, and many times, what you don't say in a particular context. And the fact that we could keep talking about the deficit coming down and not mention that the debt keeps going up, I mean, it tells you that they're not concerned about the future. They're only concerned about what's here today and what's politically correct for them, and how am I going to get as many people to like me and vote for me as possible. This is what's going on with the numbers for unemployment and the numbers for the national debt. And it's a shame. We need people down there that understand what reality is. This is the problem. And reality does not exist in Washington. I'm going down there, by the way, on Tuesday to the National Leadership Training Conference of the Association of Government Accountants, and I just put the final touches on my new article, which is the CFO Act 25 years later. And I'm going to drop a bomb. I can't make the article public until they accept it, which should be in about a week or two. But one of the big points that I'm making in this article about why we need reforms in financial management is that if we told the public the truth about what we're really spending, and that requires the right accounting to do it and the right people to count, people you can trust, that would be an automatic break on spending. By not changing to the right accounting system and lying to the people, and lying is two ways. It's what you tell them, and it's what you keep from them. By doing that, you're creating a mess for the future that is never going to be cleaned up.
And in this another article that you sent me, this is another perfect example. The president not only went before the American people and said things are getting better, we're on the right trend, we're going in the right direction. And of course, when you 5 or 6 years ago shout down a guy like Representative Wilson and you castrate him because he told the truth when he just blurted out lie, which we now know he was right. The president did lie to us. But, look at the numbers here that you sent to me. I guess it's another the deficit spending is up. The debt's going to go up by 1.1 trillion. It went up in 2014. How can that be in the right direction? How can that be in the right direction?
It can't. And if you read the headlines today, I'll give you another one, and then you go on your break. The shrinking deficits that Obama wants to tell you about are really masking the mounting debt.
The difference between the budget deficit and the national debt. And in this one, you're also, in what you sent me, is you're explaining once again that even when you're talking about the deficit for a fiscal year, there's so many things that aren't included.
Absolutely. It is a mess. The accounting is a complete mess. I don't know how many times I have said that. And how do you get these points across to the public who are so, uninstructed about much of the way we account for anything, especially the way the government lies about what it's spending. And it's an absolute lie when you use the cash basis which goes, I put my hand in my pocket and I pay for something and say that's the accounting system I'm using today, when I'm forcing, publicly traded companies to protect investors, and I have the SEC enforcing that, to use the right accounting system, that big accounting firms would say, I can now give you a clean opinion. There is no way to get a clean opinion on anything that the federal government's doing, even from a government employee who's a controller general, our most trusted accountant in government. You can't do it because you have material weaknesses. That's the key phrase that accountants use to deprive you of a clean opinion or any opinion. And that's what comes up. And by the way, get ready. By the end of February, we're going to have the update from the Comptroller General and the Secretary of Treasury, because by law, and that's the law I put in back in 1990, was passed, the CFO Act, every agency and department has to come up with a financial statement, and it has to be audited by the GAO. I don't think that's enough. It should be audited by outsiders, and that's starting to prevail, as you could see from the clip I sent you a few weeks ago, that when I was out in California and I went face-to-face with the Secretary of the Air Force, and I said, Madam Secretary, you not only have a budget problem, you have a credibility problem. You can't deliver a set of books that anybody could audit. And now all of a sudden they hired Ernst & Young because they saw it in the papers, and I was getting people wise to it, to do the audit. The point is, we have a big problem in that we can't count straight in government. And this is the problem. You got that article, $484 billion deficit for the fiscal year, September 30th, and that's last year, 2014. You had a budget deficit, according to the way they count in Congress and in government, of $484 billion, but in that same 12-month period, we had to go out and borrow $1,100 billion. Now, why? Because you've got at least two sets of books, maybe 3 and 4, because we don't even have a capital budget. And the politicians get away with it because they hire the accountants. They pay the accountants. That's why you need outside auditors to come in that are professionally capable of using the right accounting system and getting into difficult issues that are preventing right now government accountants from delivering. And even the Department of Defense, which is one of the largest, can't yet give us a set of books that we can audit. I hate to sound like I'm repeating things, but this is very important for everybody to understand.
No, I think it needs to.
On the system that the accounting profession says tells the truth about what we're really spending. Otherwise, you'll never know what the real debt is.
It has to be repeated, and we have to repeat it over and over again. The bottom line is, for anybody who's worked in corporate America, is when they come in to audit your company, whether it's a small company like I had or companies, or whether it was when I was at Lockheed Corporation, you don't tell the outside auditor how they're going to audit. There's a way and a generally accepted accounting principles and a process that you have no say over. They come in, they do their job. And in the government, it's completely the opposite. You have talked to us about the Pentagon, and you gave us a date. It hasn't been audited in how many years?
Well, since 1994, when it was first required.
And they don't know if they'll be able to audit it, in the next 10 years?
They're hoping to get it done by 2017, and that's why they're now calling in an outside accounting firm, because it's getting embarrassing. When I posed the question at the Reagan Library last November, that was the Reagan National Defense Forum, the Secretary of the Air Force was so embarrassed she couldn't answer it. She says, I can't disagree with you, Congressman. Let me have other people comment. So they had the CFO, the former CFO of the Department of Defense, comment, and he gave a dumb answer. It's not the same as business. We have assets that we can't value in the Pentagon and in the Department of Defense. Come on. It's not about assets. It's about liabilities. It's about what you're not putting on the books. It's about what we know we're obligated for, but you refuse to put it down as a liability. And that's when one of the generals, who apparently had something to do with accounting in the past, General Pintaro, said, hey, Joe, you're right. We've got $1 trillion in pensions, military pensions, that are not on the books. And if we accounted for things on what they call full cost absorption, so that the current activities would bear what all the costs are, including benefits and pensions, we would have to put on the books right now another $1 trillion just for Social Security. and not Social Security, military pensions. And he was right.
Well, you have, what you have, and we've talked about this, but we need to continue to talk about it. I'm sorry for being repetitive. I know you are, but it needs to be repeated. You have not just the political influence that is perverting it all. You have the bureaucratic status quo protectionism that goes on.
Exactly.
Right? And then,
cronyism.
I'm looking at an article here, and we don't have much time, but, Rand Paul has now introduced legislation again, I don't know what, for the umpteenth year, to audit the Fed. And they are screaming like stuck chickens.
Every excuse in the world is being given why we have to keep the Fed independent and therefore we cannot audit it. Baloney. Come on, it could be independent, but we need to know what that balance, how many securities do they buy that are really toxic securities that we force them to buy besides the Treasury bills. Hey, by the way, the bottom line, and I have to give it to you again, it's about the next generation too. And I start off my CFO article with this. Today, Mary, a sixth grader, had to stay home from school to care for her brother and sister as her mom needed to take a second job in order to pay for health insurance. This is one of the many blows that Mary will face over her lifetime. And by the time she is ready to draw Social Security, if no changes are made, she will receive only a portion of the benefits that have been promised to her. And that's when I get into why we need a chief financial officer. We are screwing the next generation. There's an intergenerational war going on, and by not recording the real cost of everything we're doing now in the real national debt, we are passing it on with a mask to the next generation, saying, you pay for it. We know that you may have to raise your taxes, but you'll figure it out. This is not fair. It gets down to fairness. We're not being fair to the people today who can't vote, young people, and the young people yet to come. There it is.
Amen, Joe. Thanks for being with us, my friend. You stay warm up there, and we'll talk to you next week.
I will.
Thanks for being with us. Joe DioGuardi, of course, author of Unaccountable Congress. We have copies. If you'd like some, just send us an email. We'll hold one for you here at the studio. Don't forget to join him on truthingovernment.org. Truthingovernment.org. Follow all his writings and research and his columns and his appearances. I thank him for being with us.